once again to our show that is called Real Shame, where we watch movies from our movie list of shame or movie blind spots. Say that 3 times fast. I'm Adam.
I'm Andy.
Earlier in the week, we watched a Steve McQueen movie that came out in 1968, and guess what? That wasn't the only Steve McQueen movie that came out in 1968. In fact, it was the second one. And now we're talking about the first one, and that movie is...
A millionaire financier / playboy robs over $2 million from a bank without lifting a finger himself by hiring men who do not know each other or him. But an attractive insurance investigator is hot on his trail, and she might just be getting a little hot for him. Steve McQueen this time is on the wrong side of the law in The Thomas Crown Affair.
Vicki Anderson, Mr. Crown.
Where's your camera?
You remember?
The lithographs. Can I give them to you?
Well, then why did you...
Did? Because I wanted to buy it. Anyhow, it's for charity, and $5 is the proper price. What do you work for? Czar? Vogue? Worldwide Polo?
Insurance, Mr. Crown.
I'm covered.
I hope so. I investigate.
Anything in particular?
The bank, Mr. Crown. The caper, sir. You don't expect us to take the loss of over $2 million lying down, do you?
It's an interesting picture.
So The Thomas Crown Affair was directed by Norma Jewison. He was coming off of the year before directing In the Heat of the Night. He's directed lots of classic films, but he did do Moonstruck, which we did back in December, and he had worked with Steve McQueen before on a movie earlier in the 60s called The Cincinnati Kid. This movie was written by Alan Trustman, who I mentioned on Monday's episode. He also wrote the screenplay for Bullet, so he's a busy man working on Steve McQueen movies that year. And as I also mentioned on Monday's episode, the titles for the credit sequence in Bullet were done by a guy named Pablo Ferro. He also did the titles for the Thomas Crown Affair. It's very split screeny and panels and all kinds of stuff. And it's not just used in the title sequence. It's used pretty much throughout the movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's
how they're showing
perhaps it's
the heist, the detriment.
Yeah,
we'll leave that up to you.
We'll get into that further. So again, as we mentioned, this movie stars Steve McQueen. This is the other movie that he did in 1968, other than Bullet. He stars as the titular Thomas Crown. It also stars Faye Dunaway, who was coming off of her role as Bonnie in Bonnie and Clyde the year prior. She plays.
She filmed this before Bonnie and Clyde hit.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, that's what I heard.
I didn't read that. She plays insurance investigator Vicki Anderson. Paul Burke plays Eddie Malone. Paul Burke, I was not super familiar with him as an actor, but apparently he did a lot of television. He was known for the TV series Naked City and also 12 O'Clock High, although he did other films. But I haven't seen him. I personally haven't seen him in a whole lot of stuff. Jack Weston plays the driver of... I'm not going to mention all the guys that were in the heist because some of them are kind of unknown to me.
Yeah.
But Jack Weston, who has a bigger part than the other guys that participate in the heist, plays the driver, Erwin Weaver. Jack Weston had worked with Steve McQueen also on The Cincinnati Kid, and of course with Norman Jewison since he directed it. And the other guy that I was going to mention from the cast is a guy that I think a lot of people know. It's Yaphet Kotto. He plays one of the robbers. He plays Carl, although he's barely in the movie.
Yeah.
Basically, he shows up to do the heist, and you don't see him the rest of the film. But we've seen him in Live and Let Die recently. More recently, he meets a rather ridiculous end in Live and Let Die. So, Thomas Crown Affair is a movie that probably a lot of people have heard of. Probably a lot of people have heard more of the remake, which stars Pierce Brosnan and Rene Russo, which came out in 1999. I don't know how many people have watched the original film. But, of course, it is streaming, and we'll talk about that. Or, actually, it's not streaming. No. I thought it was streaming on Prime Video. I was wrong. I think the other one might be streaming on Prime Video.
Pierce Brosnan one.
So, yeah, the Pierce Brosnan one. But anyway, it's readily available on Blu-ray, and, you could probably find it if you'd like to check it out. But before we get further before we dig ourselves in too deep, this is a movie that I have seen one time before. So this is my second viewing. This is a movie you've never seen before.
Never seen.
Have you seen the remake?
Yes, and I think that might be to my detriment because I've seen the remake probably a dozen times.
Oh my God! So you like the remake?
I like the remake a lot.
Let's just get that out there. You like the remake if you've seen it a dozen times. I haven't seen it near that many. Okay.
Pierce Brosnan's my Bond.
Yeah, he's a cool guy.
And he's cool. He comes off as like very suave, like very sophisticated. I think Rene Russo does a good job.
Yeah. Dennis
Leary, he's okay as the police chief, but I really like so.
Okay, so anyway, this is the first time that you've ever seen the original, the movie that you've seen a dozen times is based on.
Yeah.
So you obviously kind of know. Although in that movie he steals a painting, in this movie he steals $2 million.
Yeah, so
it's a little bit different.
I had to kind of like place it out of my head, right? Okay. You know what I mean? It's like because I'm really familiar with the remake it.
Sounds like it.
So I have to like be like, okay, we're taking this out of my head.
Okay.
So it was not new to me. I knew obviously Steve McQueen's in it. I knew Faye Dunaway is in it because also Faye Dunaway has a role as a therapist in the remake and all that kind of stuff. So just kind of went into this movie really blind, and I read something in the IMDb trivia after watching it that kind of made the movie make sense to me, and it was that the movie was they wrote the score of the movie and they edited the movie to the score, and to me that kind of made sense because the movie just to me just really felt really flat. It just fell flat. Honestly, it wasn't for me. It was definitely like trying to look cool style over substances, like we talking about the opening title sequence and all the little panels throughout the whole movie and stuff like that. It felt really like subdued. Like I don't feel like the actors they kind of were playing it really, really low key and mellow, and it just kind of felt, I don't know. It felt more like it felt more like they were bored during making the movie than it really kind of came across as like interesting people living interesting lives. And also, like I was saying Monday, it's just, I don't see Steve McQueen as like a suave businessman and all that kind of stuff. I see him more as a rough and tumble kind of guy. So for me, like him playing Thomas Crown and being like this successful businessman that's pulling off this successful heist just doesn't read that well to me. It's cool seeing him do all the kind of stuff you get to do because you get to showcase like him driving the dune buggy or him flying like the glider.
That looks cool.
And like all that stuff's cool and it's interesting to see him in that. But to me, he doesn't read off as like a suave guy. I couldn't see like in today's parlance like a Daniel Craig really pulling off like a super suave kind of guy. He always comes off as someone with like roughness to him and stuff like that. So that kind of took me away. And I just feel like Faye Dunaway was also like not used a whole lot. I felt like she was more in the background during this movie. Like it wasn't, I expected more scenes with her, and I think that's more because of the remake and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I just kind of was really disappointed with it. Just felt like it just was kind of almost maybe miscast, and it just wasn't like a very interesting story to me and all that kind of stuff. So it just didn't work for me overall. So that's kind of how I came off with the Thomas Crown Affair. But you said you've seen it once before. Do you remember liking it or not?
I didn't really like it that much when I saw it the first time. And upon seeing it this time, I have a few notes, but the one note that I want to point out that I wrote down is spectacular misfire. I don't think this movie is very good at all, honestly.
But it's well loved. Like it has like a high IMDb.
And I just don't get it. I mean, I don't get the love. I don't have a problem with Steve McQueen playing like a suave kind of businessman playboy. My biggest problem with him in this movie is that I feel like, so he's not very outspoken in Bullet. He's kind of reserved, but I think that fits the character. In this movie, I feel like he's so kind of cool and aloof that I don't really get an insight into who he is. I mean, we know he likes to play polo and ride in gliders and drive around in dude buggies, and he doesn't care about money.
I think he has less lines in Thomas Crown Affair than he does in Bullet.
It seems like he does.
Because he doesn't speak a whole lot. Like it just feels like it's like a silent movie almost.
Yeah, I don't really get his motive. I mean, yeah, it's like, oh, he just does it for the thrill. He just does it for the fun. But I wish we got a little bit more kind of who he is as a
Yeah.
person. And I was gonna say, I think in the remake, because spoiler, maybe not spoiler, I watched the remake after
Okay.
I watched this film because I've seen it once before,
We'll
but
talk
it's
about
been a
the
long
remake after
time.
this.
Yeah, but I think the Faye Dunaway character in that movie helps because she's the therapist in that movie, so you get more out of Pierce Brosnan,
Yes,
kind of what
exactly.
he's thinking.
Yes.
So maybe they could have done something like that in this movie. It would have, been a little bit better. But yeah, I think like the chess scene. A lot of people love that scene. I just think it goes on forever.
Yeah.
I wrote down it feels like half the movie. Where they're just kind of staring at each other and like moving and stuff like that. And I understand it's like kind of a seductive thing and everything. I get what they're trying to do, but it doesn't do anything for me.
Yeah,
and the scenes with Faye Dunaway and Steve McQueen, I don't feel like she really makes any inroads with him, and then suddenly it's just like she's in love with him. You need to pick up the phone and try and call this guy and try and make a deal and everything. It just does not work for me. I mean, there's a lot of scenes with them driving dune buggies and having fun that amount to nothing.
And honestly, like the dune buggy scenes and the glider scenes almost felt like filler.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, we don't have a long enough running time.
It's like a travelogue or something. Hey, look at the fun things you can do when you come to Waikiki or something. I don't know.
And then, exactly. When like at the end when she was made with that choice of like keeping the car or getting the money and all that kind of stuff, like I never felt like the relationship kind of build and any of that kind of stuff. So it's for me it just felt like completely out of the blue.
Well, and you mentioned the score, or how they wrote the score, and then they kind of cut the movie to the score. I think the score is very overbearing. By Michel Legrand is who wrote the score. I think I was like, enough. Which is funny because it was nominated for Best Score, and it lost, but it won Best Original Song.
But I heard like the reason why according to IMDb, so take it for what it's worth. The reason why they use all the panels is because they were cutting it to the score and they were trying to shorten the length for all the stuff. And in my head, like it sounds cool, like to see all these different perspectives like playing out on the screen at once and seeing how this heist is coming together. And I love heist movies.
I think it works there, but I think it does not work because they use it when he's like playing polo and when he's doing other things. Stop! Like it's fine for me during the heist because you show the different guys kind of converging on the bank because you've seen him talk to like the Jack Weston character. You've seen him talk on the phone to the other guys very briefly, but you don't really know who they are. You don't know if they've met each other or anything like that. So to see them kind of in these different panels, they all kind of come together. I'm not bothered by that. But then it's the continued use of the panel stuff.
Yeah.
I know Brian De Palma's made a career out of split screen.
We know how I feel about that.
And things like that. Well, I mean, I think Brian De Palma a lot of times utilizes it well, and that's kind of his shtick. So it doesn't bother me as much in Brian De Palma's film. And I think Quentin Tarantino did it to great effect in Jackie Brown. But this movie, it just it wears out its welcome really, really quickly. And the music wears out its welcome very, very quickly. And the other things that we mentioned that are problems with this movie is it's just like...
It's interesting, like some things to me, like in this movie feel very like subdued and could be like raised or elevated a little bit more. But then other things, it's like, oh, we're at the 10. Like this is like the maximum thing. It's like, it's really kind of interesting what pieces they put a lot of emphasis on, like score and like the panels and visual style and what stuff like I feel like are pretty unrealized, which is like the acting and characterization.
The note that you have, style over substance, I couldn't agree with that more. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head with that. I think it is. It's a stylish movie. They look great, and I do think Faye Dunaway is very attractive, and I think she maybe comes off arguably the best in the film because I do like her very kind of vivacious, sexy insurance investigator, and of course Rene Russo does a great job playing that later in the remake. But I think Faye Dunaway probably, to me anyway, comes off the best in this film. Steve McQueen is just so aloof and cool.
And he has that weird laugh.
He's too cool.
Remember that weird laugh he does like twice or three times in the movie where he's like, ah.
I don't.
It's like I think that's supposed to be him being aloof, and I'm just like, this is like crazy laugh.
Just bizarre.
Like he sits down and he just like laughs to himself, and it's like, okay, that's weird.
I didn't notice that, but it sounds like we both are This is a stinker to us. It's not very good. And the remake.
So where do you fall in the remake?
I think the remake's good.
Yeah,
The remake is far. I mean, I don't know about a dozen times good, but it's far better than this film. It's way more watchable to me.
I like the remake because I like that you get insight in Thomas Crowl through talking to Faye Dunaway. I like that, Rene Russo, you can't tell if she's playing him or she's playing like the part, and you can't really.
Chemistry is so much better in that film.
Yeah, and then like some of the things they do together seems to bring them closer together. Whereas like this one, like how romantic is like a dune buggy in the sand versus like going to a private island and all that kind of stuff.
Steve McQueen just wanted to show off his because I think he owned that dune buggy. He just wanted to show it off because again he's a big racing guy.
And I think
he does his own driving in those scenes. You can tell it's him. So
and I think the heists are more interesting in the remake. Like I like the idea that we're going to spoil the remake, but I like the machinations of it. Maybe like it's a little cheesy with like the man with the apple in the front of the face and the boulder cap. Like that's a little cheesy. But I like the idea that like he returned the painting he stole earlier, like basically like the day or two after, right?
Yeah.
And like how all that kind of machinations and everything kind of comes together, I think plays out much better than basically like hiring 4 guys that don't know each other and they're robbing a bank. It feels to me that feels very like basic and very like straightforward, whereas the remake it felt more interesting like and clever, you know what I mean?
I wonder to myself, and I wrote it down, I wonder if the original film would have been more interesting if they did follow more of the robbers and there were more kind of, because they try and get him by utilizing the Jack Weston character, right? But they don't get anywhere with that. I wish that maybe they would have tried to, or of course, I don't know how they would have tracked those guys down. They track Jack Weston down because he was the driver and they know what kind of car he drove. So that's how they get him. So I don't know how they would have found those other guys, but something like that, maybe it would have made it more interesting. Because I agree with you, the remake, the heist is more complex.
Yeah.
The aftermath of what happens is more complex. There are some more kind of twisty and turny things. They go visit Mark Margolis in prison and like, did you forge this? And there's a kind of a whole thing that comes from that.
His daughter.
So
awesome.
it's very cool. I'm with you 100%. The remake is just a lot better than the original film. This is a case where the remake, we think anyway, outshines the original. Although we may be in the minority from that, because I know, as you said, a lot of people really love the 1968 version, and that's cool, but it's a little too cool for us.
Well, speaking of which, how did the reviewers score this?
72% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes.
I don't see it.
74% audience. Roger Ebert was he gave it 2.5 stars.
In fact, the style over substance I stole from the Roger Ebert quote.
Did you?
So I wish I could own that, but
so he gave it 2.5 stars. He gives the remake 2.5 stars. I think that's a little low. Leonard Maltin gives the original 3 and the remake 2.5 stars. I personally would give the original 2 stars and give the remake 3 stars. That's how I fall on things, but that's how they fall on things. And you may go even lower on the original and higher than me on the remake.
I might be nice to the original, but I think I would go. I'm going to go. I'd have to think about it to find any flaws with the remake, because I think it's really good. Maybe the execution of the remake might not be great. I'd have to really think about it and be critical on it. But I think I just feel like it's clever, and that for me really sells the movie, and I can overlook a lot of faults with the movie just because it just feels like a very clever movie, and I feel like it's rendered well.
Yeah, well, I literally watched it just last night, and I like the interplay that she has with Dennis Leary, because he has some great and funny lines, because he's Dennis Leary. Yeah. And then also, what's his name? Frankie Faison, who's the other cop that's kind of working with her, who's really just kind of a nice guy, and and all that kind of stuff. I do think Pierce Brosnan is also a little bit aloof in the remake, but again, as we mentioned, because of the Faye Dunaway scenes where he's talking to his therapist, you still get some insight into who he is as a person, more so than you do with Steve McQueen in the '68 version. So yeah, it's a better film.
Yeah, I think that's a. It's fun to watch. I would say it's a gold standard for what remakes should be.
Yeah.
It's stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Where you kind of maybe take something and do a little bit different, but kind of keep the same little DNA and make it better.
Yeah.
At least in our opinion. All right.
Good stuff.
Well, that was the Thomas Crown Affair. On these Wednesday episodes, we always like to answer a viewer's question. And earlier in the week, we talked about Bullet, which has a well-regarded and well-renowned car chase scene. And we haven't really talked about car chases, so we pulled a viewer's question that is, hey, what are our favorite car chases on film?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you have one or if you want to talk about a little bit, but I think we talked about, I said The Vanishing, but it's The Vanishing Point.
Yeah, Vanishing
It's
Point.
well known. Ronin's well known. What was the French Connection's well known. There's a lot of them in movies. Michael Bay's made a career out of car chases in the middle of his movies with Bad Boys 2. Even Transformers, they reused some of the Bad Boys 2 footage for that. That's pretty cool. I also called out Baby Driver. Excuse me. On that Monday episode, which we both liked, and I thought was a really good driving scene.
Agreed. So you mentioned Gone in 60 Seconds. I've not seen the original Gone in 60
Me either.
Seconds, and I think the Nick Cage one, I might have seen it, but I can't recall seeing it, honestly. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Is that one that you've seen? The Gone
I
in
have,
60
yeah,
Seconds?
I've seen it a couple times.
Okay.
Because it doesn't have Robert Duvall, but it has the other guy that looks like Robert Duvall.
I don't
That
remember.
always-
Other than Nick Cage and Angelina Jolie, I don't even remember
Yeah,
who's in it.
that I always get him confused with. He looks just like Robert Duvall to me.
What about Need for Speed with Jesse? With,
I have never seen Need
Aaron
for
Paul.
Speed.
Right? Is that his name? Aaron? No.
Yeah, I heard
Aaron
good
Paul.
things about it.
It's like a video game, like based on a video game. So French Connection, you mentioned.
Will Patterson's the guy that Will Patton is the guy that always looks like Robert Duvall to me.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Sorry.
French Connection is one that you mentioned, and people are like, "Well, he's chasing a train in that." He is, but we're talking about basically anything that involves a car, even if it's just a car,
But
a single car.
If you like trains chasing each other or chasing trains, stay tuned next
Right,
week.
exactly. Well, and if you like San Francisco, we talked about, because Bullet
Yeah.
takes place in San Francisco, you'll see more of San Francisco
That's right.
next week as well. I think I've seen Vanishing Point. One, that whole movie is basically just a car chase,
Yeah, it is.
which I think also kind of Gone in 60 Seconds is as well. Both versions, or at least the original version. Ronin is good. I don't remember the car chase into Live and Die in L.A., but I know it's like iconic, and that's another William Friedkin movie. He's the guy that did French Connection, Blues Brothers, which we watched on the show.
Yeah.
That's just mayhem, right? I mean, that's like how many cars did they crash in that one scene? And then
So many.
then they outdid it with Blues Brothers 2000,
Yeah.
and then G.I. Joe like
Outdid that.
or whatever. And then you have the Smokey and the Bandit movies, where again, kind of one long
I've never
car
seen the
chase.
Smokey and Bandit movies.
Um,
The Mad Max movie.
This movie, this is the last movie that I'll mention, then I'll kind of get to my pick. The Driver, I think, is kind of an overlooked, again, not by people who are really into film. I think people like that are very aware of this film, but this is a movie with Ryan O'Neal, not Ron O'Neal, who was the star of Superfly, Ryan O'Neal, who plays the titular driver, and this is a cool, I believe it's Walter Hill, doesn't say who directed it, and I don't feel like clicking. I believe it's a Walter Hill film, or at least he wrote it, maybe, I can't remember. But I think this is a cool kind of movie. You know, he doesn't say a lot, as I recall, but he just does the driving.
It's like Drive with the
Ryan Gosling
Ryan
movie,
Gosling,
which I'm not really a fan of, but I do like The Driver. I think that's a pretty cool movie.
I've never heard of The Driver. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, it's a cool little late 70s action film. So you have a pick for your kind of favorite.
I feel like mine's basic. Or I feel like I've been saying basic
That's
a lot
okay.
this week. Mine's pretty straightforward. I went with Death Proof, like the Quentin Tarantino.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's an undersung Quentin Tarantino movie, and I think it's really good. I mean, we have my favorite guy, Kurt Russell, and then we have a whole bunch of ladies that were popular at the time. And then I just thought it was like a very interesting, well done movie, and he used like Vanishing Point and some of these other chase movies as like the little hooks to hang this movie off of or to build off of. And I thought Death Proof was really good, and I really like it. And I like I said, I feel like it's the Grindhouse movies that came out. That was definitely better than Planet Terror that Robert Rodriguez did.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good Quentin Tarantino movie. I like it. It has all the styling and the quippiness and all that kind of stuff of a Tarantino movie, but it feels like almost Tarantino light, but in a good way. Like it's not. I don't know. I like it.
I do not like Death Proof.
Okay.
I do not like Death Proof. I find it very boring, actually. Although I do like what is her name? Zoe Bell, the stunt woman
Yes,
for
Zoe
that.
Bell.
She's awesome.
Yeah,
And when she's like riding on the hood of the car, like all that stuff's
Yeah.
very cool. But I feel like it takes a long time to get there.
It's got Zoe Bell,
Yeah.
Mary Elizabeth Winstead. Doesn't have
It's got Sidney Poitier's daughter, Sidney
Yeah.
Poitier.
Yeah.
S.Y. I don't remember who else is in it.
She was the night nurse in the Daredevil stuff. She's I can't think of her name right now. She was in Clerks 2. Rosario Dawson.
Yeah, Rosario Dawson.
Rent's
We're both
own-
blanking on it.
yeah.
How can we blank on Rosario Dawson?
I don't. Yeah. So I like Death Proof. I think it's fun.
I liked Planet Terror better than Death Proof.
I
Out of that
also-
Grindhouse thing.
I like it like when they flip on him and you find out like how much of like a coward and like fear of pain Kurt Russell's character is. Like I don't know. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not a fan, but the car's cool and the driving and the Zoe Bell is awesome she's an awesome stunt woman.
I agree with that 100%. All right, what's yours?
Yeah, well, I think you kind of mentioned it. I mean, I mentioned this before on the show. I think that basically all of the stunt driving stuff in the Mad Max movies is amazing. Even the original film, Mad Max. But if I'm going to pick one Mad Max, and I know Fury Road is basically one long chase, but so is the Road Warrior to me. At least a large portion of it is. So I'm going to go with the Road Warrior because I just think the stunt work that they do in those Mad Max films is so incredible to watch, and I mean it just looks really cool. So I'm gonna go with Road Warrior, Mad Max 2. AKA the Road Warrior, whatever you want to call it.
I need to revisit those early Mad Max Road Warrior movies.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since I've seen those.
Well, they're all now released in 4K now, so
there we go.
You can watch them all.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was our favorite driving car chases movie, I guess. We kind of put them all in there, but it's overlapped, but yeah.
And we didn't mention 2-Lane Blacktop. For those of you that love that movie.
Oh, I didn't even know that movie existed.
Yeah.
But now it's your turn. Let us know what we missed. Is it 2-Lane Blacktop? Is it The Driver? Is it Drive? Maybe it is. I mean, I guess I can't begrudge you for liking that movie, but
I don't like Drive. I like The Driver.
Yeah.
Not Drive.
No, I don't like Drive either. But I'm saying, maybe go out there and see what other movies are out there. Maybe expand your horizons a little bit if you like Drive that much.
Yeah.
Nicholas Winding Refn is the director of that. His movies don't really speak to me. He's also very has all of his actors.
Does his movies really speak? I know that the movies he did after Drive, it's just like scenes of go on for 10 minutes with nobody really doing anything.
It's like he loves the Thomas Crown Affair.
Only God forgives.
Yeah. So that's let us know. Leave a comment if you're watching on YouTube or shoot us an email, realshame@gmail.com. That's where we answer viewer questions like this one. So send us your viewer questions. We need those. Please like, subscribe, share, do all that social media stuff for this episode. We appreciate it. And stay tuned next week as we watch some movies from his list of shame and also my list of shame. And we'll see you soon, guys. Have a good one.